All right, guys. So pretty excited to bring on Mr. Paul McKnight for 002. Paul is a incredible visionary in the solar space. He is the owner of EFS Energy, and he has an incredible background. We're going to get into his career as a QA and QC professional, how that ties into what drove him to become the person he is today, the owner he is today, and how it helped him grow EFS to what it is. And I'm super excited to bring this one to you guys. Hopefully, for those of you who are renewable energy and sustainable energy folks, this is a showstopper. All right, so we finally made it happen. Paul McKnight, EFS Solar, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, man. So I'm super excited to have you on. So I hang out with you pretty often, and we're friends. So, man, I've been dying to have you on here to talk a little bit about, what's going on in the alternative energy industry, and most importantly, what's going on with EFS and kind of what you guys are building here, man. I know it's been a long story, and I wanted to dive in. So you were in bioscience prior to EFS?
Chemistry. I worked for a couple different pharmacy, or not pharmacy, but I worked at Covidian and Sigma Aldrich, doing quality control for different pharmaceuticals, and worked for a short time at Dynalabs, which did quality control testing for compounded drugs that pharmacies and hospitals mix. So strong science kind of background. Always just really been fascinated by solar. Ever since I learned about it, at a young age, and always just kind of pursued that through my life. I never really saw a practical application as far as making a living off of it until it actually started happening.
Yeah, and we see now every day it's happening faster and faster and more aggressively, and everybody wants it. It seems to be the new big thing.
Once that price barrier kind of broke away, once it started making financial sense for people to really start investing in it, it was game over. And now, we see the rise of renewable energies really taking over. There's more growth in renewables now today than any other energy sector. And traditionally, we've seen coal being the primary energy source for very, very long time, until natural gas kind of had a breakthrough with the fracking and all of that stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Not very environmentally friendly activity.
Yeah.
But
in comparison, not so much. Yeah.
But natural gas does produce a lot less CO2 emissions than coal.
Right.
And so there was kind of a net positive gain, there as far as environmentalism goes. With gas displacing coal in a lot of places. Missouri, not one of those places. Missouri is still 80% of their power still comes from coal.
So and I mean, we've got several organizations, Fortune 500 companies here that have made their living for, 50 years, maybe more, maybe 100 years. I don't know how long what's the big one downtown?
You got Peabody.
And, they've been around for forever.
Yeah.
And that's basically, in a big way, your competition, right? I mean, slowly kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of renewable in Missouri, and it doesn't always have to be that way, but in Missouri, it really is kind of, renewables versus coal, kind of a battle. It's different state by state depending on what their, resource mix is. Like in Illinois, for example, we do a lot of business there, and they have a good mix of nuclear and coal and gas. And, they've got a ton of renewables. They've invested in a big way in renewables.
Their legislation is making it a little bit more friendly, right? Is Missouri and Illinois, because we're right here, we're dead center. Is Missouri and Illinois, are they both doing anything from a legislation perspective to make it easier for you to do business on one or the other? Or is it pretty equal both sides of the river?
They're very different, and Illinois is much, much friendlier to renewables than Missouri.
Why is
It's just, I mean, you just look at the makeup of the government. Illinois, because of Chicago, basically has a much more progressive legislature.
Okay.
Missouri is a very red, conservative state, and it's also just the history of energy in those two states, where in Illinois you have nuclear plants, so the nuclear guys have a piece of that bargaining power,
right?
And it's not so one-sided. In Missouri, it's all coal, so it's like the coal guys basically dominate the.
There's someone in Springfield or in Jefferson City, one fighting to keep it very red, otherwise in Illinois.
They just have established, very long-term established contracts and things, buying coal. They got coal trains coming in, hourly, whatever. I don't know, how much it actually is, but it's a lot. And they have, 20, 30, 40, 50-year contracts with.
Contracts that long, really?
Yeah, because they have to invest a lot of money to build a big coal plant, right?
Yeah.
And to all that infrastructure. If you can imagine trains and railroads and factories.
I read something not too long ago about something similar to this, but it was Alaska-based. It was the oil side of it, like how much money it takes to get a refinery up and running and pumping oil in Alaska, and what that does to population, so on and so forth, and then the ability for any kind of alternative energy.
Yeah,
it's like it's pretty much obsolete because we spent all our money getting that thing built.
Yeah,
that monster.
And then still today, even any energy infrastructure that you want to build up, it requires a heavy front investment, solar included.
Right.
So you see the same thing happening with solar. People are doing 15, 20, 25-year contracts to make sure that they see a return on that investment from the assets that they build today.
And your spin on that, per se, or your way to kind of punch that in the gut, is offering somebody something that works more efficiently, faster, and pays you back quicker, right? I mean, that's kind of the.
I mean, in my opinion, and you can get into the specifics, the details, and semantics of it, but in my opinion, solar is better in every way. With the exception of, it doesn't produce power when the sun's not shining.
Right.
So that's the biggest hurdle that we face with renewables, is just managing the power through the night and through times when you don't have the sun or the wind constantly powering, which is batteries, essentially. So we're really kind of looking to the next big thing in batteries. Whatever the next thing is beyond lithium, is really going to be, I think,
the game changer for your
renewables
industry
across the world.
Oh, okay. So this battery thing is, and that's something that's going on, like the Tesla, Elon Musk world, right? That's their baby, battery development, or
right. With the scale of production that Tesla has, and now other manufacturers that have jumped on that lithium-ion bandwagon.
Yeah.
They've scaled up production 100-fold, from where it started, and that will, of course, lead to the more investment in the technology. People are constantly looking for the next best thing.
True.
So it just accelerates that process when you see more of it happening. So you've got the cars. All the electric cars are using the lithium batteries now.
Lithium-ion, yeah.
You can buy battery packs for your home, or for even large scale.
And that's going to be what it is ultimately, right? Or what we think the next evolution is.
Well, it's already happening.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one in California that I read an article about a year ago. That's like the largest lithium-ion battery, power plant.
Yeah.
In the world, I believe it was at the time when they built it. It may still be. And essentially, all it is a bunch of shipping containers full of lithium-ion battery packs, and they just stack. They just build them all out in like a parking lot, and that's a power plant. It's just a bunch of batteries. They're feeding it with windmills and solar and
what a great. I mean, man,
it's enough to power a whole community.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I saw something like late last year, and it wasn't panels. I don't know what it was, but they had something built. I think it was in France, wasn't it? It was on the ground. It was like solar panels on the ground, and they were like, we could light the city for, pretty much 90% of the day, which would save us $300 billion. It was something ridiculous. The numbers were outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, if we did this everywhere, this is how much money we'd save. It was ridiculous. It was enough to pull the United States out of debt. Well, as the amount of savings that it would be.
and even before that tipping point where the batteries become, the thing that pushes us beyond that, the point where we can say, okay, let's just do 100% renewables. You can still offset a huge percentage of what's happening today with just producing power during the day when the sun's shining. Because when you think about what uses a ton of electricity, you think about air conditioning in the middle of summer when the sun is blazing hot.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when you're producing all your electricity. So it correlates really well with how we use electricity. So
yeah,
I mean, we can offset today a massive percentage of our power, right? And we're sitting at 1%, 2%, 3%. I mean, the utilities right now are, nervous about breaching like 5-6% because managing the flow of power when it's intermittent like that is actually problematic for them. And so
now you and Ameren, you guys do have a good relationship. Don't have any.
We have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, as I say, they need the power, and
they don't necessarily need us. I mean, they can build their own facilities, and they are building their own facilities. They're building solar farms. But what we specialize in is smaller scale stuff where we're not necessarily building utility scale power plants that take up big swaths of open land. We like building stuff on rooftops.
Right.
And that's primarily what I've done with EFS Energy is we build on residential rooftops, we build on commercial rooftops. We do ground mounts, but and we're getting into bigger and bigger projects all the time, which I love. But there's just so much open roof space that can be used to generate power. Right. It doesn't make any noise. There's no moving parts. It's, it's clean. There's no air pollution, no water pollution. And so that's, the other thing that I think is so great about it, because I've always been environmentalist at heart as well. When I graduated from SAU Carbondale with my chemistry degree, I had a minor in environmental studies as well. Okay. And just because it was just interesting.
Just a passion point for you. Yeah.
So
which led perfectly into this.
Right. Yeah. So that's where my mind is at, and my head and my heart, aligned with, an environmental thing with science and technology.
I was to say that's the interesting thing is like, some of the times when we have conversations, it seems like there's a very big intersect between emerging technology and solar, and that seems like it's just constantly getting more and more. And there's also a really interesting, when I talk with Eric about legislation, it's really interesting how that comes down the pipe from a standpoint of like a guy like you having to keep your eye literally on every day in legislation everywhere too. It's like, hey, we need tax credits, we need good legislation, we need a working body behind us.
Yeah, and I do my best to stay involved with MOSIA, Missouri Solar Energy Industry Association, which, we hire an executive director. I'm on the board of directors. I'm currently serving as vice president. So we hire an executive director and we hire a lobbyist, basically.
Wow.
And so we have meetings and we talk about what are our legislative priorities, like what laws do we need to protect, what laws do we need to go after, what do we need to change, and we try to build a little strategy around that. And I mean, our budget compared to what we're up against is peanuts, but
because Peabody Energy's on the other side of the table.
Yeah,
and they're like, listen, we'll throw everything.
Yeah, so basically we have Ameren, Missouri, that controls a lot of behind the scenes what happens in the legislature, and so we do sit down with them from time to time and talk about what we can kind of negotiate and work out between
Is the fear on their end a job elimination thing per se? Is that what it is more than? I mean, obviously there's money, but there's there's more than that.
Like loss of revenue. If people generate their own power, obviously they're going to buy less from the utility company, and there's different ways of talking about that. But ultimately, I think their kind of stance and tactic is to say, if they say, well, we have to still make the same amount of money as an organization, so we're going to raise everybody's rates. If we sell less power, like everybody else has to pay more.
So everybody else getting a swift kick in the ass the minute that you guys start putting up more panels. So as this thing gets bigger,
that's their
theoretically
theory.
This is their way of.
It doesn't have to happen that way, right? But of course, but
they're going to encourage you to not put panels on your house by doing that per se.
Challenge that
budget.
Those guys.
Yeah, that's a budget and a lot of really good lawyers and some good lobbyists. Yeah,
and they do provide a lot of jobs. I mean, you talk to people around St. Louis. Yeah. A lot of people are employed by Ameren.
There's a lot of Ameren employees. There's a lot of third-party companies I found out.
Oh, they hire a lot of contractors.
And that's a big.
It's a big business.
Yeah, it's a big business, and they give back too. That's the other thing I think that makes it hard for you not to, like me. I'm a cyclist. That's what I like to do in my hobby, my spare time. And they built almost every greenway in Missouri, and they've done it with Ameren money. So you're like, you kind of
that money is that's the energy money, right? And so renewables is now cutting into that because it's just the natural progression of things. Like it's the natural progression of technology, and it's the people's will. People want, when you talk to people, you say, do you want a coal plant down the street, or do you want to put solar panels on top of your house?
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. Yeah.
So it's people want something that pollutes less. People want the greener option, right? Like,
well, I got buddies that I think I told you I had a buddy currently that's building out his RV, and they're going to do this over-the-road lifestyle. And that was one of the weird things he came to me with. He was like, I don't know if we want to really burn electricity in here all the time. Could Paul put a solar panel on top of our RV? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get those questions all the time.
And he's like, dude, it's just so much better.
Yeah, I mean, you can do small scale stuff like that. Like for example, I have a small little panel. It's probably 1.5 feet by 2 feet. 80 watts of power. It charges a 12-volt battery that I use for my kids' Power Wheels car, and I've got that on my back deck. I swap the battery out and charge it up with a solar panel. So
the envy of all the kids in the neighborhood. Check this out.
But yeah, you can get kits for your RV,
right?
Or a boat, or whatever.
Yeah, because this thing's I've been seeing that, and that's kind of the regular thing, and of course, media pumping in all the information. I mean, it hasn't been 48 hours since it was on the news about the new credits and whatnot that they're going to issue. So they're
yeah. So I was actually pretty surprised to see that, because the last time Congress voted on it, they actually voted down the extension, and so a lot of people have been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes to get that voted on again.
Done. Yeah.
And they got it done. So that 30% tax credit extended another 5 years, which is amazing. I mean, it's and necessary, in my opinion. I mean, you can't, as a country, how do you transition to new infrastructure without investing the tax dollars into it?
Right.
It's nearly impossible. I mean, people want to talk about privatization of everything, and they say, big government's bad, government's bad, whatever. But every industry, every energy industry has had massive subsidies since the beginning of time. I mean, like it has to. It's just part of the infrastructure. It's like roads and.
I used to be. I was one of those people on the opposite side of that conversation, man, for quite a while, because I came from the car industry, and when I was in the car industry, I was in the repair business. Being in the repair business, the thing every guy thinks of when he's a manager or when he's an owner is like, oh my God, if they start making electric cars, we are so screwed. Like, we are so screwed. Nobody's going to have a job. What the fuck are we going to do? It was a nightmare, for everybody. And I got online, started looking, and sure as you can imagine, you're looking on ASC's website and you're seeing electronic vehicle 1, 2, and you start seeing this. It's like, dude, they wouldn't be writing the curriculum at a Society of Automotive Engineering and the American Society of Automotive Excellence, like, they wouldn't be writing all these unless they thought it was coming too. They know it's coming.
Yeah.
And I used to be on the other side of the table with several people and going, let's slow it down. Let's keep gas going. Let's keep cars. Let's keep the cars going out here. Slow those battery guys down. Now, hell, that was 5 years ago.
But I think you just look for the next thing. I mean, eventually, somebody's going to come up with, fusion reactor or something crazy that's going to, make solar
next level. Yeah.
Just, a joke. Like, nobody will be like, oh, we don't need solar panels anymore. We just get with that fusion thing and like just hook up,
Yeah, that's going to be.
Or if they ever figure out what Dr. Nikola Tesla was trying to do, transmitting electricity through the air.
Yeah.
You just put up an antenna to get your electricity, and then
if they figure that out, man, that's the good news is by then you'll have solar panels on every roof.
But what's happening with solar is really interesting to me, because one thing that I think about with it is, it is an infrastructure thing. Like, we have the power infrastructure, and that's why we work so closely with Ameren and all the utility companies, because we're tying into their grid that they've built over the past 150 years, whatever. And that is the infrastructure, and every time you put solar panels onto that grid somewhere, you're basically adding to and supplementing and bolstering that infrastructure, making it better.
Right.
And what's really interesting about that is that you've got investment from homeowners and business owners and anybody. Like, these people are putting their own money into building the energy infrastructure. And that's never happened before, right?
Right. And they want it because of the massive scream right now for, hey, let's make this place a little bit better.
Yeah. We're killing the earth.
I'd say the evidence
hard to
is
deny.
Overwhelming that we are not doing a good job protecting this place. So that was my big argument when I finally, could get myself on board. I was like, yes, we need electric vehicles, and yes, we need solar panels.
And it's like, we're spoiled because we live in a big open country, and we can burn, and the exhaust goes up in the air, and we don't,
you don't see it.
It blows away.
Feel it right
now. We don't live in LA,
The smog level's not. Yeah, where was that? It was on there because of COVID recently. They were showing pictures of before COVID, after.
Oh, like
COVID.
In India.
Like in India, yeah. The India smog, how bad it is. I'm like, man.
And they're like, hey, there's mountains over there. Did you guys know?
Yeah, they literally step outside and they're like, I can see across a whole mile now, and we're like, I see across a whole mile all the time. Like, that's not weird, but apparently over there, that's shocking. That's how bad it's got.
And that's all. A lot of that's from vehicles, right? And because it's all when all the vehicles come off the road, all of a sudden, boom, the air's cleared. You know,
and that's kind of that's been my argument. I'm like, oh man, I used to be the biggest. Me and the gentleman I'm talking about right now, we're gonna have that fight, I'm sure, eventually on this show, because he's all robots and the next generation, and I'm all like, man, we'll get there, but just let's let it, let's marinate on that a minute, give that a second.
Yeah, that'll be the next thing. Our kids are gonna be so far into AI, robotics, and androids. I mean, I don't know. You don't even know.
You lose the social side, though. That's the weird thing.
But we just don't have any idea what's going to happen, what it's going to look like, right?
Yeah.
In 20, 30 years.
Well, you see it when you're out. I don't remember what debate I was in recently about, the social setting. I think it was something to do with my significant other and us talking about how to go to dinner after COVID. With we're going to put a plastic barrier up. The waitress is going to slide it underneath like you do at Lowe's now.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to do dinner. You're not going to talk to the waitress. You don't need to. She can give you a menu and you can select, or you can select it on a tablet and you can slide it back, and she don't have to talk to you.
And the meal comes out on a conveyor belt.
The meal comes out. It's just like, well, no, she just slides your table. Walks on by and you're like, what the hell are we in here? This is sick. But you go into a restaurant now and you do realize, and I mean, this is anywhere, a college campus or restaurant, you realize, like, nobody is the way we did, the way my generation, your generation did, nobody is sitting there socializing. That is somehow right now really, really getting lost in a big way. You can see it because when you walk in and you see 8 people sitting at a table 1 foot apart, and they're all going, or 6 feet apart if they're doing it properly, they're just going like this.
Yeah, looking at their phones, yeah.
They're on their phone, they're on their tablet, but they're absolutely not talking to each other.
Yeah.
which I hope, that's a benefit for our generation because it's a skill set we might actually have that nobody else will have in the next generation.
Yeah.
So will be needed regardless. But it speaks to that evolutionary piece in a big way too.
Yeah.
I don't think I could agree with you. The next generation is going to be like, oh, I'm getting electric. What are you talking about? I'm never going to buy a gas car. Dad.
So I just, so I enjoy being part of that evolution of the technologies and doing something that I feel like is, the right thing to do, a good thing to do for the earth, for the environment, the people,
you leave the place better than you found it.
Yeah,
I mean, really, in a big
extent,
way. Yeah, to some extent, exactly.
And I'm not the epitome of, the environmentalist. Like, I don't always do the best job with recycling every last piece of plastic and all these things. And I try my best to do those things. But I fall short in a lot of those areas. But I figure if I can do something on a larger scale with, helping people produce their own power and really cut back on carbon emissions in a big way.
In a huge way, yeah. And
I
also,
feel like I'm doing my part to
the business of it. I mean, that's one of the things that was great about me and you talking, me and Eric, speaking about the business side of it. And it's truly incredible the benefit that a company can see at the bottom line by making an early on investment in this.
Yes.
I mean, that's where you're like, what?
And so one of my favorite customers, he said to me, his mantra in life. He's an older gentleman, and he's done very well for himself. And he says, "Do well by doing good."
Right.
And that really resonated with me. So I like to pass that along because of course I want to make money. Like, as a business owner, as a human, I want to be successful. I want to make money. I want to have the finer things in life, but I also want to do something good. And I don't want to get there by hurting people.
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And that's when you told me originally, that's the part I think that I made a quick connection on was when you told me about the science side. Because that has to be a weird transition. You're coming from not necessarily the most evil place on earth, but pharmaceuticals pretty damn evil. I mean, and then you go to solar where you're
generally
like,
speaking, yes.
Yeah, where you where you're generally like you go from being that guy to being this guy where you're like almost the complete other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like you're saving people money, you're helping the environment, you're helping people, you're putting businesses money back in their pockets in a pretty short period of time for a net return. And then the other side, probably not.
Yeah,
as
here's
much
an
of
investment that you can make in your property. It's going to make you money. You can feel good about it. It gives you good optics. Other people can see that you're doing something.
This thing. Yeah, that's really good for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just saying that was the first connection I made. I was like, hold up, this guy went from science, like bioscience, like pharmaceutical science, to solar.
Yeah, it's all related. It's all physics.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It is absolutely. And you need a mind from that world to come into this one, I think, too. Like
it definitely helps understand the technology. The steepest learning curve for me was just the business side of it, just running a business. I had no experience.
Yeah, you weren't a business. You weren't ever an owner of prior to this, right? Like this was always.
No. I worked in a lab. I did the 9-to-5 thing. Didn't think too much about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Went home and just kind of did whatever.
Toughest part of it, probably running the business.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, running a business. I mean, hiring, firing, policy, figuring out
permits,
tax
orders,
issues, all the red tape, all the stuff, government, just everything. Like, it's just it's completely overwhelming. And I was fortunate enough to get into the SBA's Emerging Leaders Program, which is an accelerated MBA program.
Nice.
So it was like a 10-month program, and it was free. Because I was selected to be one of the 15 students that year, and helped me a lot. Really helped me understand how to run the books, how to manage, things.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And a big part of it too was, how to get government contracts and things like that, which I never really pursued too much, but it's always an option.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a reason, and just out of curiosity, you guys are in Illinois, you're building in Missouri, you're you're touching this footprint. Now, can EFS build beyond that footprint, or how hard is that?
Yeah.
Like if you were like, hey, tomorrow we're going to Arkansas, like, is that a thing, or is there a whole bunch of red tape to get from Missouri to Arkansas?
No, I mean, it's certainly possible. It's just another thing to do, right? So I have to kind of, day by day, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year, decide what am I going to focus on. And right now it's building my core business competency in Missouri, in Illinois. A lot of solar companies that do what I do, they either end up, they stay really small and stay in a really small localized area, or they start kind of carbon copying themselves in other cities and states and chasing rebates around the country.
Right.
And
is that easy right now? I mean, are there multiple rebates through multiple states, or is there just a handful of states that are good? How does that
Illinois is really good. Illinois is like in the top 3 in the country right now.
That's nice. Yeah.
So that's really fortunate for us because we don't have to travel too far. We're right there.
Right.
So we do a lot of business in Illinois. Missouri is kind of at the lower end of the range, so not great. But we still do business here because people still want solar here.
Yeah, people still see the value in it. The more you drive, especially, I mean, where we are right now in Chesterfield Valley, you drive around here, and it's very clear that it's a thing. I mean, the loop views right down the street, there's
more and more every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, it's becoming a thing.
So my goal here is to establish a local business, which we've done. I mean, I've been doing it since 2011. So we are quote unquote established here,
right.
And to be to continue to do business through good times and bad. And and I think we've done it, a couple times over now. Everyone in the industry calls it the solar coaster because you got incentives over here, and then you get a bad piece of legislation that really knocks you back and lay people off, and then something happens over here. We got rebates and incentives over here, and now we hire some people over here, and so you got a lot of really extreme kind of ups and downs, and so a big focus of mine has just been really trying to find a way to just stabilize. We run a smallish crew. Right now I've got 15 employees. We were up to about 20. We were up to 20 before
COVID
pandemic.
Yeah. I was gonna say that hit you guys pretty much in the gut, or was it?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it still is.
Yeah, it still is tough right now. Yeah.
Sales are definitely down. People are nervous about investing money right now. For good reason. And so we have, we still have a lot of inquiries, and we're still, doing a lot of proposals.
Knocking down leads. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's just, there's definitely a lot more hesitation for people to pull the trigger on it. And we're hoping that, continues to kind of fade away.
Yeah. That's I was gonna say I was just talking before I met with you. I had Matt on my last episode, and he's the owner of Project Deliverance and Jim Jones, and it's a gym, and I mean, my God, like, devastating.
Yeah.
Like, shut it down, try to make online videos and hope people will buy them. I mean, just
you got to completely change the business model.
Flatline business. Yeah. And the business that he's partnered with out of Salt Lake, they've had to redraw their model. Their model's 35 years old. From a gym perspective. He's like, dude, it was like, he goes, it's like starting all over.
Yeah, it is.
Like
I'm sure it
years
is.
Back,
I'm sure
and
it is.
Just rewrite the whole program.
We've been pretty fortunate just because as a sort of utility type company,
you guys are,
we're considered as a construction. And, we're basically a construction contractor. If you boil it down, that's kind of what we are. But, we're considered like an essential service, and so we were allowed to continue to work and build projects throughout the lockdown and everything. And I was also fortunate enough to get the PPP loan.
So you were able to get a little bit of help from,
got some help there. It was huge help, and allowed me to, keep some of my key employees working from home, and, even though there's reduced.
There was a lot of people who didn't get that or couldn't get a hold of anything, and Yeah, they felt the burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot.
So we're continuing on. I'm actually rehiring a couple people currently, as you know.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so we still got some good projects going on, and some of the larger projects are actually less affected. It just depends on who we're working for.
Right.
Some businesses are continuing to do very well, when others are struggling. So
what's Paul McKnight doing in 20 years?
20 years.
20 years, man. Solar's on every rooftop. The fusion shit's working.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, let's do something else. What are you doing in 20 years? Because, I mean, your environmentalists never lose their knack. That's the one thing you can guarantee with them. If you're an environmental or a renewable guy, you're never going to probably go away from it. If anything, you're going to try to swing to the next.
Yeah, I definitely want to continue doing, some type of, philanthropic type work with whatever I'm doing. And it'll certainly be tied to technology in some way.
Yeah.
I always, want to be on kind of like the cutting edge of what's happening technology wise.
Technology.
Use drones, for example. Like I was probably, and I can't say this with any kind of certainty because I know a lot of people were getting into it when the higher end drones were coming out, but I'm pretty sure I was one of the first solar companies in the country, like really using drones to scan and measure rooftops on every site.
How much is that? I was gonna say, what kind of advantage do you feel like that gave you as far as?
It's just a big cost savings, because the traditional way of doing it is
estimating, measuring,
put a couple guys on the roof with a tape measure, and so
man,
that's a liability. And not to mention the cost of, and if you're doing it with one guy, you're violating OSHA rules basically. He's probably not tying off. Right?
Yeah, he's just going up.
He's going up there and he's measuring and he comes back down. and he might be able to do a couple roofs, but he's going to be wasting a lot of time and he's got to drive a ladder truck around. So you got all those expenses, right? With a drone, I can send a guy out. I can send a guy out in a Prius, and he takes him 20 minutes per site. He can scan that rooftop perfectly every time. No mistakes, no transit.
Yeah, I've seen the site surveys, man. Those are really cool. I mean, obviously, I liaise a little bit with Hunter, and having an opportunity to work with my company, working with your company, I've had a little bit of a chance to see that, and it's really cool. Some of the angles and whatnot they're able to get.
Yeah,
that technology.
And I mean, without a question, like every fifth one, the guy comes back and the engineer goes, "Is that a 7 or a 1 on this piece of paper?" He goes, "This chicken scratch," and they, well, it's a 7. I don't know, so, and then go,
it's a 7.
Hey, what's the measurement between this, this vent stack and the edge of the roof? Because we got to do the setback.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't take that measurement. I didn't know you needed that. Go back, so now you're making 2 trips. You put the guy on the roof twice, so now you're doubling the risk and the cost.
That's
so it's really been a big cost savings, and to have it export a line drawing directly into AutoCAD or whatever drawing program you're using saves a bunch of time because now you don't have the drafter sitting there redrawing it from the measurements.
Yeah, and you don't have mistakes. Yeah, right. It just goes down the line.
Cuts all the mistakes out. Mm-hmm. So I love that aspect of it. Originally just bought the drone just to take photos of our projects, and then discovered the software and started experimenting with it. Found a company that just did an amazing job with the software. They use like AI learning software to make it better every time, and they've made substantial improvements on it over the past couple of years.
Yeah, because that's something. I mean, that's the thing. I wonder, and obviously you don't speak to many solar owners other than you, but that'd be interesting to know who's using what. Are a lot of, in your opinion, are a lot of guys using the old model?
Yeah, they definitely are. I talked to people like, I don't know, a year ago. It was about a year ago. I think I went to like a Solar Power Midwest Solar Expo, right? And they have all the vendors and manufacturers come, and all the installers come, and they have talks and workshops and speakers and debates and different things. And they were looking for speakers, so I signed up to give a presentation on using drones to do rooftop measurements. And nobody that I spoke to, there
Was
may have
doing
been people that were doing it. And so I got some good questions about it. Some people were starting to get into it. But a lot of the bigger companies, I mean, they just pay someone to hire a guy to go measure it with a tape measure.
Do traditional estimating.
And
wow,
then,
that's insane.
and when they make a mistake, you know, so they draw a design based on what they think it is, and they may not even go. You know, they may just do it from satellite or aerial imagery, and they'll draw a design. They'll say, okay, we're going to put 30 panels on that roof. They buy 30 panels. They send it out. They send a contractor. They say, put those 30 panels up. The guy starts building it, and he goes, hey, these aren't going to fit, man. I got 4 panels here that are not going to fit. And so they call the design team. The design team's got somebody on hold. They immediately just redraw it. And then they call the customer and they say, hey, we're changing your system size, and they redo the contract like on the fly. And that's just how they operate.
God. Okay.
And I'm not trying to do that. Like we're trying to be efficient and clean and like give the customer you're going to get what we sell you, and you know what you sign is what you're going to get.
Exactly what you're going to get.
This is how it's going to look, and this is
Yeah, that sounds like a far more efficient model. I can't imagine a guy coming to me and be like, here's the aerial picture of your house. We're going to put the panels here.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you haven't been up there yet. How do you know?
You'd be surprised, though. I mean, some people sell over the phone. They, sight unseen. They'll send a contractor out.
Holy cow.
Ship the stuff out, and they just deal with the aftermath.
All panels aren't the same, right?
No.
I mean, in that world, they're not all like, does GE and Panasonic carry the same line of panel?
Yeah, so Panasonic is a manufacturer, and they're high end. Obviously a well-known, established.
Yeah, it's a big brand. Yeah.
LG is one of the other really big ones. That has a really high end panel, and that comes down to that's a premium product. It's like that's like buying a Mercedes versus a Honda or something,
oh shit. Okay. I would not expect there to be, so there is a such thing as like the most premier panel versus, so there is a sliding scale on these.
And it's really just in the construction of the panels, it's they all have, 25-year warranties on them and things like that. But like there was a company that we bought panels from, 5 years ago that went bankrupt, and that 25-year warranty goes poof. And I've got a customer where the panels are failing because they weren't made well, and now he has to buy new panels.
Holy geez.
So having been through that experience, like I'm much more selective about what equipment I'll buy and sell now.
As you should be. I would definitely. Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably the legitimacy and the longevity is probably.
Yeah, you go with someone like Panasonic. You have no worries. They're not just gonna disappear.
They're not gonna disappear overnight. It's gonna take a lot of punches to take them out of the fight. Understood. Well, hey man, this was great. I appreciate having you on, and I want to bring you back on. I know I want to put you with Eric one day because we got to talk about the legislation side. I'm dying to hear his spin on the legal stuff. He gives me an earful every time. He's like, "Would you believe?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't even know."
There's things like the homeowners association is, they'll prevent people from putting panels up, and so there's a piece of legislation that we've been trying to get through for 4 or 5 years that stops HOAs from preventing solar arbitrarily,
just for fun.
Because people say, hey, this is my property. I want to put what I want to put on my property,
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, I just bought this house. I'm in an HOA. I can't put this on my house because of my HOA.
Yeah. And, that's one of many issues. Another one that we deal with a lot is a difference between Missouri legislation and Illinois, where in Illinois, you have an entire year to build credits. So when you feed the solar power back to the grid, it runs your meter backwards. And so you get credit for that power. So you don't have to store it. You don't need batteries, right? You just push that power back. You get credit for it. Every little bit of power that you generate comes off your bill some way or another. You either use it directly or you sell it back at retail. Oh. And in Illinois, it's a retail all year long. So like you can save up credits in the summertime and use those credits in the wintertime.
It's like the modern day budget building per se.
So like we have exactly. Yeah. So we have like a guy in Illinois who has grain bins, and so he uses a ton of power with those drying fans in the fall, right? So we put a system big enough to offset all of that power, but it generates it in the summer. So it generates a ton of excess power in the summertime. And all that power goes back to the utility. Utility resells it to the next guy down the line that's using air conditioning or whatever. And in the fall, his entire bill is completely offset, thousands of dollars worth of bills.
That's what I'm saying, man. The level of business that you got, or the level of kickback that this has for a business owner is absolutely insane. So that's why I was like, man, I gotta hear some of the legal and legislative side. I'm gonna try to find. I'm still looking. I'm gonna lean on Eric for this. Is finding a guest that can explain to me.
I got a guy for you.
You got a guy, dude. Bring him on. I am dying to get a guy on here that can explain to me. Not just that. I have several alt energy questions on why we've put up these barriers where we're saying like, no, we're not going to let that no. And I know most of the answer, lobbyists, money, but I want to get a little bit more in depth. Is there anybody coming down the pipe that says like, hey, you know what, it's time to face the future per se? See what happens.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do. We're pushing the envelope every day, you know? And to give you the contrast to that story I just told you is that in Missouri, it's a monthly reset. So you cannot store credits in the summer to use in the winter. It resets every month. And so if you have grain bins, forget about it. You can't offset that power. If you have electric heat that you use in the winter, forget about it. You can't offset that power.
That's loss. That's just loss.
You just can't offset it with solar.
Yeah.
With net metering the way that it is. And so of course we prefer that annual, reset.
It's a better deal for them. Yeah.
It's a better deal for the customer.
Yeah.
And the utility will argue that, that's a terrible deal for them because they're paying retail rates for credits that were earned months ago.
Right where you are.
So that's one of them. That's just one of them.
You're awesome. I appreciate you coming on, man. Dude, we're going to do this again. We're going to dig a little deeper, but
okay.
Next time, man.
Good talk.
Thanks for coming on.